Welcome to True Echo, where powerful real-life inspired stories unfold. Stories of injustice, resilience, and unexpected redemption that resonate with the soul. Today's story isn't just about luxury cars or wealth. It's about dignity, legacy, and what happens when you underestimate quiet strength. What starts as humiliation ends in a powerful reversal no one saw coming. The morning air was soft, almost golden, as Robert and Martha Jenkins walked hand in hand beneath the glowing skyline of a city that promised so much, yet delivered so little when it came to grace. Robert, with his worn brown hat and cracked leather shoes, stepped carefully onto the polished sidewalk outside Kingston Lux Motors. Beside him, Martha, delicate in her floral dress, her gray hair tucked neatly into a bun, looked up at the towering glass building with a mixture of wonder and reverence. Inside, the dealership was more palace than showroom. White marble floors gleaming like mirrors, million-dollar cars arranged like art, and a hush of classical music playing beneath cascading chandeliers. They stepped in with awe, not entitlement. For decades they had admired Rolls-Royces in magazines, watched their son rise to heights they never dared dream, but they had never allowed themselves this moment. Until now. And it only took seconds for that dream to fracture. A salesman named Bradley Scott, sharp as his tailored suit, intercepted them with a smile so thin it cut. He never looked them in the eyes. He looked at Robert's shoes, at Martha's worn purse, at the fraying sleeve of her dress. And then, without needing to say the words, he said everything. These cars start at $900,000. They're not really, for everyone. The humiliation was quiet, clinical, and swift. Other employees chuckled behind polite coughs. A few customers scoffed. Bradley gestured toward the exit like he was flicking lint off a sleeve. There's a used lot a few blocks down. They had done nothing wrong. But still they were escorted out like trespassers. As the heavy glass doors closed behind them, the light outside felt colder. Robert looked down at his shoes. Martha's lips trembled. "I thought we'd be treated like people," he whispered. She didn't reply. She couldn't. But someone had been watching. Isabella Cruz had only meant to deliver paperwork that morning. But when she saw the scene unfold, something in her froze. The silence that fell when Robert and Martha walked in, the shift in Bradley's tone, the collective snickers, it didn't sit right. And when they were turned away, when Martha's hand trembled just before stepping off the marble floor, Isabella knew she couldn't stay silent. She followed them out, voice trembling as she called, "Excuse me, please wait." Her apology was simple but raw. "That's not who we are. At least not all of us." She offered to show them the car they'd been admiring. Not to make a sale. To offer what should have been freely given from the start, respect. Back inside, whispers followed them. Bradley sneered. Others stared. But Isabella ignored it all. She led Robert and Martha back to the Rolls-Royce boat tail, jet black, glowing under showroom lights like obsidian. She told them of its walnut interior, its handcrafted leather. But more than that, she made them feel worthy of sitting inside it. Robert's hands traced the dashboard reverently. Martha smiled for the first time that day. "How does it feel?" Isabella asked softly. Robert looked to his wife, then back at her. "It feels like we matter." It was a moment. Brief. Fragile. But something had changed. And Isabella wasn't the only one watching. That evening, the Jenkins household sat unusually still. Damien Jenkins, the pride of his parents and one of the city's most powerful entrepreneurs, noticed it the moment he walked through the door. His mother stirred soup she wouldn't eat. His father stared at a plate he didn't touch. When they told him what happened, it was in the softest tones. No bitterness. Just truth. They had been laughed at. Told they didn't belong. That people like them didn't belong near cars like that. Damien didn't raise his voice. But the quiet rage that filled him was sharper than any outburst. "You did nothing wrong," he said firmly. "Not a damn thing." And then he stood, walked to the window, and stared out over the skyline he helped shape, the one his parents had built him up to reach. "They'll remember who they disrespected," he said. "We're going back." Martha shook her head. "I don't want to cause a scene." Damien smiled gently. "It's not about a scene. It's about a standard." That night he made the calls. 2 Rolls-Royce boat tails, ordered, delivered, black as night, polished as power. 9 a.m. sharp. His parents would return. Same clothes. Same love. But this time with their legacy at their side. Morning arrived with a clear sky and sharp sunlight that seemed to bless the street outside Kingston Lux Motors. The dealership buzzed with early routines, coffee brewing, ties straightened, salesmen stretching smiles into place. And then the cars arrived. 2 identical Rolls-Royce boat tails glided down the boulevard, turning the corner like royalty on parade. They didn't roar. They whispered power. Inside, Bradley Scott watched them approach, his espresso cup halfway to his lips. Damian Jenkins stepped out first. Calm. Measured. Every eye inside recognized him, the billionaire innovator, the youngest black CEO in clean energy tech. No one understood why he was here. Until the second car opened. Robert and Martha Jenkins stepped out. Same hat. Same dress. Same quiet grace. But today the earth moved beneath their feet. They walked inside, Damian holding the door for them. Bradley paled. The room hushed. No one laughed. Damian stepped forward, voice clear. 2 days ago my parents were turned away. Not because they misbehaved. Because of how they looked. That ends today. He didn't threaten. He revealed. Every word was a scalpel cutting through the marble silence. When Bradley tried to apologize, Damian stopped him. I'm not here for your apology. I'm here for accountability. Mr. Harris, the dealership's longtime manager, had stepped out of his office the moment he heard Damian's voice echo through the marble showroom. The air was different, thicker, charged, and when he saw who had returned, who stood beside Damian, he understood instinctively that the next few minutes would define not just reputations, but the soul of his establishment. He held a tablet in his hand, the dealership's internal camera footage queued and ready. He had reviewed it that morning, watched the entire disgraceful episode unfold. And now, in front of staff, clients, and executives peering down from the mezzanine, he tapped play. The showroom monitors came alive. There it was, Robert and Martha stepping through the doors with reverence and curiosity. There was Bradley swaggering forward with a dismissive sneer. There were the glances, the scoffs, the sarcasm. These cars start at $900,000. People like you. The smirks. The laughter. The way Martha's shoulders tensed, the way Robert looked down at his shoes. It was all there, unmistakable, undeniable. When the screen went black, the silence left behind was unbearable. No one moved. Bradley, once the most confident man in the room, was now pale and breathless. He tried to speak, but his voice faltered. You're firing me? Mr. Harris didn't blink. I have no choice. What you did wasn't just unprofessional. It was inhumane. Bradley looked around the room, searching for an ally, someone who would come to his defense. But no one did. They looked away. Their silence this time was not complicit. It was condemning. Bradley turned and left. The sound of the showroom door closing behind him rang like a gavel. Damian stepped forward again, his voice now softer but unshakably firm. My parents didn't come back for revenge. They came back because they deserve dignity. Every person does. And if this industry, if this country, is going to be better, we need to start by seeing people fully, not through the lens of price tags or skin tones. He paused, then turned toward Isabella Cruz, who had stood quietly near the display cars, her eyes brimming with emotion. Isabella Cruz, he called. The room turned. Isabella froze. Yes, sir? She asked, stepping forward, unsure of what was coming. Damian smiled gently. You were the only one who stood up. You didn't just offer kindness. You offered courage. She looked down, shaking her head. I just did what anyone should have done. But they didn't, Damian said. Then he turned to Mr. Harris. I've decided to purchase the very car my parents were humiliated for admiring. But I have one condition. He turned back to Isabella. Every cent of the commission goes to her. Gasps rippled through the showroom. Isabella's eyes widened in disbelief. I can't accept that, she said, voice cracking. You will, Damian said gently. Because this isn't just a reward. It's a message. Doing the right thing should never come at the cost of your career. It should define it. Mr. Harris nodded. I agree. And effective immediately, Isabella Cruz is promoted to senior sales manager. Applause broke out. Not forced. Not hesitant. Genuine. Some employees clapped. Customers too. Others wiped their eyes. And in the middle of it all, Isabella stood stunned, hand over her heart, tearful but proud. Martha reached out to her. My dear, she said softly. You were the light we didn't expect that day. You made us feel seen. Robert added, you didn't just show us a car. You showed us that grace still exists. And Isabella, who had once feared being overlooked her entire life, now found herself at the center of something far greater than any job title. The applause faded, replaced by a reverent quiet. Robert and Martha stood once again at the center of the showroom, not as victims, not as customers, but as something far more powerful. As a legacy. They didn't gloat. They didn't posture. They simply stood, graceful, dignified, proud. Damien offered them his arm. "Shall we go?" Robert nodded. "Let's." They walked slowly, deliberately, toward the same doors that had once closed behind them like a verdict. But now the space around them widened. Employees stepped aside, not out of obligation but respect. Near the exit, a young sales associate who had once laughed under his breath now stood still, his face pale. He said nothing, but his silence was different this time. It was regret. The older woman with the clipboard, who had once smirked, blinked away a tear as Martha passed. She didn't know why she felt moved. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe it was witnessing what quiet strength really looked like. Isabella didn't follow them to the door. She just stood by the grand display, hand to her chest, eyes full of light. When Robert paused and looked back at her, he gave a single nod. She smiled through tears, whispering, "They'll remember this." Outside, the Rolls-Royces gleamed in the sun. Not symbols of money but of something deeper: redemption, return, resilience. As they climbed in, Damien said nothing more. He didn't need to. The cars pulled away like a silent procession, cutting through the city streets not with noise, but with meaning. And in their wake they left behind not just a dealership changed, but a city stirred. Weeks passed. The showroom at Kingston Lux Motors resumed its routines. The marble floors still shined. The chandeliers still sparkled. But something had shifted beneath the surface. Bradley Scott's desk sat empty. His nameplate removed. But the true vacancy wasn't material, it was spiritual. That corner of the showroom, once filled with arrogance, now felt solemn, reflective. The young intern who had watched from the coffee machine now moved differently. He didn't roll his eyes when elderly customers entered. He stood straighter. He greeted them with warmth. The woman with the clipboard requested to shadow Isabella. Not from guilt but admiration. Isabella, now senior sales manager, led differently. Not with power. With purpose. She implemented empathy training, not flashy but real. New hires learned to see beyond appearances. To listen. To respect. Sales rose. Reviews improved. But more importantly, so did awareness. The footage of that day never leaked. Damien had made sure of it. This wasn't about going viral. This was about change. Quiet, lasting change. And people talked. In barbershops, churches, neighborhood cafes. You hear about that couple turned away at the dealership? Their son came back the next day with 2 Rolls-Royces. No yelling. No revenge. Just presence. They fired the guy who laughed at them. Right there on the floor. But the story wasn't about wealth. It was about worth. At the Jenkins home, life returned to normal. Robert still wore his old hat. Martha still baked pies on Saturdays. Damien still called every night, sometimes with updates, sometimes just to say, "I love you." One afternoon, Isabella received a handwritten letter on soft ivory paper. She opened it with care. "Dear Isabella, you didn't just change how we were treated. You changed how we saw ourselves that day. You'll always be part of our family. With love and gratitude, Martha and Robert Jenkins." She framed it, not as a trophy but a truth, because the softest voices still hold the most power. Never judge a person by what they wear or the color of their skin. Legacy isn't loud, it walks in quietly, hand in hand, and leaves behind a silence you'll never forget. This is True Echo. This story moved you, share it. Let it echo. Subscribe for more real-life inspired stories that reveal what society often overlooks. Comment below. Have you ever witnessed dignity restore what injustice tried to erase? And don't forget to like this video. It helps us bring more of these stories to the world.